Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. Melissa here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you for all the love and support that you have been showing us for our other videos. We greatly appreciate it. Please hit that subscribe button and check the bell notifications so that you will be notified every time we upload a video. This week we are going to be decorating a 20-ounce skinny from Maker Flow, and we're going to be doing a geode with several glitters. I hope you like it. Please stay with us and see what we come up with. Please feel free to leave any comments down below, and if you have any suggestions on other tutorials that you would like for us to do, please let us know. Let's get started. For this particular cup, I decided to do the decals first and apply those to a glittered and epoxy smooth 20-ounce skinny. That way I know where I want to put the geodes and that there would be enough room for the decals. Here you're going to see one of the methods that I use to apply decals to my tumblers. I always have a difficult time eyeballing to get the decal straight. I am not good at that at all. So I use a hinge method and use a tape measure to measure from points on the decal to either end of the tumbler to make sure that my decal is straight. So here I'm just adding the transfer tape to the decal, peeling off that backing so that I can put this on the tumbler. For this particular method, I'm going to use a piece of parchment paper and put the decal on the parchment paper, but leave a small piece of that transfer tape off the edge of the parchment paper so that it can hinge to the cup, and then it can be maneuvered on the cup and not actually stick to the cup until I'm ready for it. The parchment paper allows that barrier there. The hinge that is attached to the tumbler makes sure that the decal stays in place, but the actual decal itself isn't going to stick to the tumbler until I'm ready for it. So here you'll see me just measuring from specific points on the word plexus so that I can get the correct alignment. And if it's not straight, then I can just maneuver the decal up or down on the tumbler to get it where I need it. You'll see here that I do measure more than once. I tend to measure 3 or 4 times just to make sure that I have everything right where I want it. I think there were about 3 places on the word plexus that line up even across the bottom, and I used those pinpoints to make sure that I had the decal straight. And you'll see I'll measure across and then I'll remeasure, and here I'm going to remove that hinge so that where I moved the decal up and down at, it can now be hinged on the tumbler straight. And then when I go to remove that piece of parchment paper, all I have to do is just lay it down, lay the transfer tape with the decal down straight, and it'll be good to go. So once I rearrange that hinge, I'm just going to measure one more time, make sure it's right where I want it, and then we're going to remove that parchment paper, and then very carefully, making sure that you keep it pulled taut and that it's straight, just lay that transfer tape over. And I haven't rubbed that decal down yet because, I want to measure again just to make sure. And, of course, everything did stay where it was supposed to. And then I can rub the decal down to make sure that it's going to attach to the tumbler. And then I can roll back that transfer tape to get it off of the tumbler. And the decal will stay right where I want it so that it's straight. Now I did curve that top word independent, so I couldn't use that as a point to make sure my decal was straight, which is why I used the word plexus. Certain points on that word did line up across the bottom, so I used those to make sure that the decal was straight. And when I first cut this decal, I did not use the correct font for the word ambassador, so I recut it using the correct font, and we're just going to use the same method to apply that underneath the word plexus. We're going to put the transfer tape on there, remove that protective backing, and then use the parchment paper again to do the hinge method and make sure that we get that word straight across. I've sped this up so that you guys didn't have to watch me measure a dozen times again. If you do have any questions, please let me know, and I'll see if I can go into more detail for this for you. We're just going to rub that down really good. When you're doing small letters, make sure that you take your time. Don't go as quick as I did to remove that transfer tape. If you go slower, those letters won't peel up, or you can make sure you catch it before you pull it up onto the transfer tape. Now we're going to add the geodes. This glitter here is Winter Wonderland, and I'll make sure we have the link to that below. We're going to use Mod Podge to adhere the glitter. You could probably use different adhesion methods. Just Mod Podge works well for me, so I tend to work with that most often. Sorry about being off the screen here. I sped that up so you didn't have to watch it. We're going to add the Mod Podge, and the trick to this is to make sure that you don't do straight lines. You kind of want jagged lines so that it looks more natural. Then you're just going to dump that glitter onto the Mod Podge, let it adhere, and then I'm going to use just a cheap fan brush from probably Walmart to knock off any excess glitter that you don't want when you get ready to add that next layer. And again, the trick here is to just make sure that each layer of glitter you apply for this geode, that the edges are not straight. You don't want straight edges. You want the edges to be kind of jagged. I've put that next layer of glitter on, and I'm going to show you the third layer. You're just going to go in with the Mod Podge right beside of the layer previous, and make sure you follow all of those jagged edges so that that next layer flows in smoothly. And then your outside edge, make sure that it's not straight and that it is also jagged so that it actually looks like a rock. So that first glitter that we used was Winter Wonderland. The second glitter is Pixie Dust. This gold glitter that I'm going in with is actually glitter from Petals of Gold. I just pulled all the chunky pieces out of it so that it's just the smaller cuts in that particular glitter. On your Mod Podge, when you're adding that, don't make your Mod Podge layer too thin. You want it kind of thicker, not super thick, but you don't want it super thin either, so that it gives your glitter some texture. Most of the time when you use Mod Podge to adhere glitter, you want it smooth so that you can't see the brush strokes through the glitter. But for this particular application, you want a thicker layer of Mod Podge, and you want it to have some texture because you're trying to add dimension into what the design is, what it's supposed to be. So here I'm just using the popsicle stick to dump on that glitter so that it doesn't contaminate the other colors there. Sometimes I will use the popsicle stick to dump it, and other times you will see me actually pick the cup up and just dump it on. But I am still trying to keep the glitter from going into the other glitters because I'm not letting that Mod Podge completely dry. You can do it this way, or you can do one layer at a time and let the Mod Podge dry in between the different colors of glitter. It's totally up to you. And also, whenever I add the glitter, whichever side of the geode I put the glitter on is the way that I'll turn the cup to dump that glitter off. And then once I'm finished, I'll turn the cup all the way over so that the glitter is facing downward, and I'll use something to tap on the cup to tap off the excess. Again, you'll see me use that same fan brush to brush off any excess glitter that we don't want so that we can get that next layer of Mod Podge and glitter down. Right, the next color of glitter that we're going to use is a pinkish red color. It is called Cranberry. It's a really pretty color, and it ties in very well with the color combos that we're doing here. Now, the base of the cup that I did off camera before we got started, it's a 20-ounce skinny from Maker Flow, like I mentioned previously, and we sanded it, painted it white, and then we base glittered with Crystal Gem, and then added 2 layers of epoxy, sanded it smooth, and now we're going to add on these geode stripes with the different glitters here. Alright, that next layer of a glitter that I just did there off camera is called Frostbite. And it's a very, very pretty white, bluish silver. And it's a smaller chunky, but it is still a chunky cut. And then this last layer that we're doing here is called Petals of Gold. And it's one of our most popular chunky mixes. If you don't have it in your inventory, you definitely want to get that in your inventory. It is such a pretty rose gold glitter. Again, we're following those jagged lines from the previous glitter, and then we're making sure the outside is jagged as well. Now I will add 2 layers of glitter to each of these colors. I will not do this particular side on camera, though I will show you one for the other part of the geode that we're going to do. This one we did from the bottom of the cup with the geode pointing toward the top. Now we're going to pat down all that chunky glitter, make sure that none of those pieces are sticking up so that the epoxy goes on smoother. Alright, and here we're going to do the geode from the top of the cup with the point pointing towards the bottom of the cup. Say that really fast. That was a little difficult. Alright, I have the Mod Podge on here, and we're going to do Petals of Gold first. And I am doing a bit chunkier of a section here, and I'll show you why I did that here shortly. We're going to tap off that excess glitter and use that fan brush to make sure that there's no excess glitter where we don't want it. There were a couple pieces there that I missed, so I just added some Mod Podge, and then I'm going to dump that glitter back on there and tap it off. And because this is at the rim of the cup, you'll see me take my finger and rub it around the rim here. And that is just to make sure that none of those chunky pieces of glitter are sticking up over the rim, which will help when I have to sand this later. Now we're going to brush that excess off just like before. There were a couple pieces of that chunky glitter just laying a little bit outside of where I wanted it to lay, so I just used my finger to maneuver that back in to where I wanted it. We're going to speed this process up a little bit just so you don't have to watch how long it takes. We're going to add that next layer of glitter, doing the same process that we did on the other side of the cup. Here we're just adding in that gold. And then we're going to do another layer. I'm going to do that just the same way. Also, another note here is whenever you're doing these layers or these stripes, don't use the paintbrush to put when you're using the paintbrush to put the Mod Podge on, don't use it like a paintbrush. You want to do more of a dabbing technique than you do a brush technique. That ensures that there's not actual brush strokes. It also ensures texture, and it helps you keep it looking more natural. We've added Winter Wonderland and we've added Cranberry, and now I'm just showing you how I would go in to add that second coat of glitter, the second layer of glitter to each of these selections. Adding the next layer of glitter is a little more tricky with the chunkier glitter, but you're just dabbing the Mod Podge on. You want to cover that glitter and then just dump on your chunky glitter, and it'll add that second layer to it. Again, this is Petals of Gold. It's one of my absolute favorite colors on the chunky mixes. And then you'll tap it off just like you did before. And now I'll repeat that step to all the other layers here. And then that'll make sure that you can't see the white coming up through those different colors. And again, what I just did was take a piece of parchment paper and tap down the chunky glitter so that it's laying flat and no pieces are sticking straight up. And that allows your epoxy to go on smoother, and it helps you do your last layers of epoxy in fewer coats if your chunky glitter is laying more flat. We're just adding those second layers to these other colors, and then we'll move on to letting that Mod Podge dry. I believe I let that Mod Podge dry overnight so that I could ensure it was completely dry before adding any epoxy. And I believe I did 3 layers of epoxy over this before I was ready to do the next step. And this is right before I put it on the turner to add the epoxy. And I did add the customer's name like they requested. So now we're letting the Mod Podge dry, and then once it's dry, we're going to add 2 to 3 layers of epoxy just so that it's, for the most part, smooth. And then I sanded down a few areas, and I'm taking the metallic paint pens. I got these particular paint pens from Walmart in the craft section. And you're going to, you can use whatever color you want. I find that I lean more toward the silver and golds, but there's tons of colors. You can use whatever color you want. Make it your own. Feel free to do it however you think looks good and what you think your customer is going to like and what you like. Here I'm just showing you what I did because I needed to add a second layer to the color. So you just use the paint pen to put a line between the colors of glitter and follow the jagged lines of the glitter. Make sure that your pen marks, your paint pen marks, are not straight. You want to follow the edges of the glitter, like your glitter should have the jagged edges, like I mentioned. You're just going to make sure that your markers follow those jagged edges, and that'll allow for a more natural look on the geode. You can do 1 layer of the marker. I found that for these particular paint pens, the 2 layers looked much better. But if you get a more expensive paint pen, then 1 layer would probably work just fine. If you do happen to get these, then just, you know, do 2 layers. One layer looked okay, but it did seem kind of see-through, so I just went back over it once it dried with a second layer, and it was perfect. Once I got this done, I did one more layer of epoxy, and I believe I still had a couple little rough spots, so I sanded it really good, and then I did a final coat of epoxy, and it was done. The one thing to remember when doing the paint pen is there's a few spots you'll see where it looks like I was going along the line and then kind of added an open spot to that particular line. That just adds to the natural feel of those lines. And here it is with a layer of the epoxy over it, and then the final cup. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Please leave any comments, questions below. We'll make sure we answer those, and we'll see you next time.